Hey, let's go.
Well, let me kind of pull it all together, because we were a lot more left brain than I ever thought we were going to be so far in some of this stuff, in just some really amazing ways. And then we appreciate you sharing, because it definitely, we've had a full body conversation so far. Talk about what you've learned through all this, and what you've brought now to Pafow, your company that you're the CEO and the founder of, and tell us the things that you've learned and how that comes across in your business and what you're doing in your business, and talk a little bit about that, please.
Okay. Well, I'm going to reframe the question just a little bit, because I'll tell you about the things that I am still in the process of learning. So, because I don't want to imply that I'm done learning about myself. Gotcha. Or, about how the world works. I mean, in the nature of my work, which is people analytics, I often say people analytics is a process, and the output is insight. And this insight is used to elevate confidence that a certain thing will happen in the future, a goal will be attained or not. But it's all about elevating the probability, elevating the level of confidence that a certain outcome is going to be achieved. And so I start with that because I have this insatiable curiosity and willingness to learn, and in turn, take appropriate action based on that learning and based on the goals that I have. So again, intention, appropriate response, but the willingness and capacity to learn. And so I have reframed over the past few years my small company. We used to pre-COVID conferences around the world. We've done conferences in London and Sydney and San Francisco and Philadelphia and other locations. And now I've had a podcast for years. Now I have a show, and we'll hopefully be able to come back in person next year. And so this community is about people data for good. And people data for good, I define as promoting the ethical and responsible use of people data, analytics, and AI for the benefit of individuals, first and foremost, teams, groups, organizations, and society at large. So that has a very, in my view, and my hope, a virtuous purpose of being conscious around how the data that we're generating through using our devices, through surveys we're taking, through our purchasing behavior, or whatever it might be, how is it being used? And I'm sure you two and listeners have seen The Social Dilemma. And Social Dilemma is more around how consumer analytics is used, but similar things are happening within companies. And if it's not attended to consciously, there's groups that could be adversely affected. Women have left the workforce in droves during the pandemic because in many cases, childcare or elder care. So how can leaders accommodate those realities as opposed to, hey, I'm paying you X, just suck it up and deprioritize everything and make the work number one. Behind me is a book by Jeffrey Pfeffer out of Stanford, Dying for a Paycheck. And he provides evidence that we're compromising our health, we're compromising our relationships, we're compromising social well-being because we're not honoring what I call individual capacity. I mean, we're all constrained by time. And many talented people just get more work thrown at them. And the assumption over years has been, oh, they'll just figure it out. And I think all three of us have grown up in what I call the suck it up generation. You're lucky to have a job. This is the way it is. Just go do it. And I'm railing against the machine in that way because, hey, no, that's not fair to the individual. It's not fair to his or her family. It's not fair to her health. And we have to do better. And strangely enough, we have the data, which we formerly did not have, to actually show the suffering. And we actually have the data to show the opportunity to make better decisions. So that's what I'm about. It's predicated on learning. It has this geeky element around data and analytics and technology. So we can talk about structural equation modeling and factor analysis and survival analysis and all this other stuff. But what it's really about is making the world a better place. So I'm staying rooted in that. I'm a shameless do-gooder. We'll see where we go.
Do the analytics hold up for you? What are the challenges, and who out there is the standard in the business at this point? Is it you? Is there somebody that you modeled after, and what are you chasing?
Oh gosh. Well, many of the names that I've mentioned, I view building off their work. Carol Dweck, Angela Duckworth, Jeffrey Pfeffer, Rob Cross, Michael Arena. I mean, all these names probably know, and a few of your listeners know, but they're all people who are trying to make it clear that there are better ways of doing things. Like there's like Sean Aker, who I mentioned earlier, a support group. Can or should organizations help facilitate the formation of support groups within organizations? If people are suffering physically, how can indicators be generated to show that certain people have that are trending towards that, or in fact in a place where they need to shift their job, but they're not going to tell anybody that their parent is sick because they don't want to lose their job or they don't want to lose that income. So
like your hamstring.
I'm really trying to humanize the corporate experience, as opposed to, hey, that's just the way it is, suck it up, there's another person in line and kick you to the curb. I mean, it's not the way. I'm a capitalist. I get it. Capitalism is optimizing the use of capital. And people say, well, that's human capital too. Well, optimize the use of human capital to a certain extent. They're still human beings, and there's still certain constraints. So I'm really an advocate of what's called conscious capitalism and stakeholder relationship management. So making sure you're taking care of your employees, you're taking care of the environment, you're taking care of your vendors, you're taking care of not only all the stakeholders within an organization, as well as the shareholders, who make money, from the performance of the company. So it's a tough road because there's a lot of historical inertia that I'm bumping up, and others who are on this movement are bumping up against. But that's the challenge. That's the opportunity. That's going back to tenacity and grinding. That's my grind. That's what I get up in the morning to do.
Is there any? Do you deal with data when it comes to religion and race and those kind of things, or is it strictly
diversity, equity,
are you
inclusion?
blinded?
Yeah. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are top of the list, along with well-being. So when we talk about religion, it's when we talk about gathering data around religious affiliation, that can get tricky. I'm a proponent.
And how?
I'm a proponent of gathering more information than less, because if you gather more, then you can accommodate. But here's a story that not many people know, your listeners. So we talk about data privacy, transparency. So everyone should know about GDPR. GDPR is General Data Privacy Regulation, came out in Europe in May of 2019, I believe. And so that effectively is the basic human right to be forgotten. And why is that so important? Why is that so important to Europeans? And why did they lead the edge on this? Well, in the 1800s, 1900s, immigration was happening in Europe. And the Benelux countries started collecting data on a religious affiliation. So when people died, that they can get a proper burial, because they didn't know, in many cases, who that person was, what religion they were affiliated with. So you had all this data being collected on religious affiliation. Then World War I happened. And then World War II happened.
Oh, yeah.
And so, how did the Nazis know that someone lived there? Because of that data set. So that data, and the data that we are harvesting consciously and unconsciously, is a big ethical dilemma. You can be using it for good, burying somebody properly, but is it secure? Is it going to be fall in the wrong hands? Mm-hmm. Another quick example, we now know the genetic makeup of people who are predisposed to PTSD.
Oh, wow.
Should we be screening people genetically for special forces, for first responder type jobs?
Wow.
Absolutely.
So these ethical dilemmas are going to only be elevated as we get more data on who we are as human beings, who we are as individual workers, what the desired outcomes are, what's the nature of the job in the example that I just highlighted. So I get in the muck of all that and explore, what's most appropriate at this point in time, given the costs and benefits. And it's messy, it's fun. It's when I say fun, it means I want to engage in that discussion. I embrace the complexity, and it's I'm an advocate for the worker. I get organizations need to make money, but I'm also very clear on my boundaries, and
Nice.
I want to remain a conscious, virtuous voice.
Nice.
What's the main question you get from corporate people when they come to you? What do they want to know? What's the most common ask?
How do I do this? It's probably the most common, but beyond that, it's really more specific. It's really about a specific problem. Like right now with Black Lives Matter and women leaving the workforce, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, well-being. Those are the themes that are top of mind for everyone. It used to be employee engagement. Engagement is downstream of those. Inclusion and inclusive leadership. What does that look like to be inclusive? What language do you use? It's being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I know we know it within the context of sports, being that way within being in a room with somebody who doesn't have your same background. I mean, one of the greatest gifts that I had early in my career at Ernst & Young, I was working with a Muslim gentleman from India who was Canadian, and a Pakistani Christian, and they sat right next to each other and me. So us three were right there. And I was like, why are they so kind of cold to each other? And I had to get educated by both of them. So now you have, God. Well, you had Darius and, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. Oh, I feel so bad. So, he has his prayer rug and he's going into a room, during work hours, probably 3 times a day. And it's like, okay, that's a thing. That's not out of a book. That's what he's doing right now. And God, as soon as we get done, I'm gonna remember his name. but it's we don't work together very long, for the record. But he was a beautiful human being. They were kind, but it opened my eyes to, hey, we're working together. They have different opinions. They dress differently, talk differently, but they know stuff I don't. I hopefully am bringing something to the table. It was uncomfortable at the outset, but it got really fun and cool. Darius and I were playing video games. We're playing video basketball games across the street. We became good buds. And it's just, I just love, I became, it's one reason I went to Russia. And I was in Sweden before that, and been to, I don't know, close to 30 countries, I think. It's just, I enjoy being uncomfortable. I enjoy the challenge of it. I enjoy the learning that comes out of it. And so I would hope when you ask me what organizational leaders are asking about, they're really asking how cultures can be more evolved and be more inclusive and create this psychological safety as well as physical and emotional safety at scale. And that's training, that's providing data and indicators to show that they're trending towards that, which oftentimes means creating new measures. So that's probably the number one ask right now, is around those themes.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a friend that I was talking to about talking to you, and she said, ask him about artificial intelligence and the data. And is there any parallel? Do you cross that subject much?
Oh yeah. I mean, AI is part of it. I try and get out of so Elon Musk and I, we don't like each other. He doesn't know who I am. I just don't. Right. I don't like the guy. I don't like the guy because he's taking resources and go, oh, we're going to colonize another planet. And AI is going to take over. I'm like, we could spend another 2 hours about why that's so absurd and wrong and just not an appropriate use of resources and all that.
Give me the edited version.
The edited version is that artificial intelligence brings up the notion of what's that machina thing? What's the ex machina?
Ex machina, yeah.
Yeah. So that we're going to be replaced by androids and that, other things. It's really more appropriately augmented intelligence. So we are going to have tools and resources that are going to take away transactional work to a large extent. And we as humans are going to do the more creative aspects of work. And is it going to displace jobs that are currently prevalent? Yeah, it's going to happen. It's imminent. Can and should we be preparing for that? Absolutely. Are we doing it societally at a fast enough rate? Absolutely not. It's absolutely absurd that we have a talent shortage in the United States right now, given that we just need better, not only training and education, but we need better forethought. So the training and education that happens is appropriate for the jobs of the future.
But I'm a teacher, Al, and we're not teaching that way. We're teaching you how to pass the test. We're teaching you there's one right answer. It's in the back of the book.
I totally get it, and we're going to be at a competitive disadvantage if we keep going in that direction. So the idea,
I can't grade it, Al. I can't do it. I can't grade it.
I totally get it, and all these competing, goals that need to get lined up, and it's a big systematic problem. And I choose to tackle it. I work with a company called MZ, Economic Modeling Specialists International. They were just acquired by Burning Glass, so I don't know what they're going to be called tomorrow. It's either going to be Burning Glass or MZ. And so they are trying to connect educational institutions, everything from junior colleges and universities, with economic development boards at regional levels and employers, as well as individuals, to effectively get them on the same page. Because right now, educational institutions are doing their thing, economic development board, and they're just all over the place, and resources are being misallocated, time's being wasted. And at the end of the day, there are jobs that are not being filled, or they're being filled by people from overseas. And it's because they're more qualified, or they're being outsourced to overseas, or they're being automated. And actually that last part, if it's going to be automated, it's going to be automated. But you get the idea. I mean, I do conferences, and I did this one conference years ago on artificial intelligence, and I was a keynote speaker and I was a facilitator. I would say 70% of the speakers were foreign born and foreign educated. Mm-hmm. They might have gotten their bachelor's or master's here in the US, not all the time, but most of them, when I say most of them, I'm significantly over 50%, were foreign born. And I'm the most inclusive. I like well, I won't get into immigration policy because I'll just that'd be a whole.
Well, what does that say to you, though? What does that say to you?
It says that we're not preparing the next gen of talent to do that work. And here in the San Francisco Bay Area, I see it, and it's prevalent. So
how would you approach raising? How would you help raise your grandchild? When your grandchild comes, that's going to be the generation that's going to be impacted. What's the move? Teach them how to play the guitar, paint, gymnastics, yoga.
Part of it, learn how to learn, and learn how to learn at pace.
Yeah. Adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. Because my job didn't exist 10 years ago. It didn't exist 20 years ago. I mean, we were all told that the job that you're going to have in the future doesn't exist today. And in my case, it's absolutely true. I'm in some place. I mean, I study economics. I have a master's in organizational development. It's like everyone who's in my discipline came from a different angle. There's some with a tech orientation. There's some with an IO psych orientation, some with an econometrics, some with a business. It's from all over the map, but we're all studying the workforce and people within it. So there was a question out there that I didn't land. Do you remember what it was? No?
I mean, I just asked you about your grandkid. I don't know if that was what you were going to elaborate on.
Well, actually, no, I'm going to tie it in together so Google, for example, is putting together certificate programs, which is effectively rapid fire degrees. And again, I'm using my own language there. Right. I have something called the PAD framework, the Personal Assessment and Development Framework. It has 10 dimensions. It mirrors the Talent Assessment and Development Framework, which is for organization. So the same 10 dimensions, they're just used differently. And I'll go very quickly through them. Skills, so the technical skills to do the job. Behaviors, so how someone shows up, AKA soft skills. I don't like the term soft skills. I think it was created by dudes who wanted to feminize behavioral traits. Right. And I think it's BS. Behavior is hard. That's actually where people get hired and fired, is around behaviors. Technical skills you can acquire if you have the basic cognitive abilities. Skills, behaviors, experience, pretty self-explanatory. What have you done in the past? Mm-hmm. Education/knowledge. Education is formal, knowledge is informal. So what would it be like if you can document your own informal acquisition of knowledge, books you've read, videos you've watched, articles you've written, so portfolio. Your informal knowledge, because the degrees, certificates, they show up on resumes and stuff, but what's the informal knowledge? So being conscious and consciously create it. Fifth, contributions/accomplishments. So what have you contributed to as part of a team and accomplished individually? I can give a rat's tail what you were responsible for. I want to know what you've actually done. Right. 6, activities. How do you spend your time? So talk about, in my work, temporal intelligence, the wise use of time. So are you using your time in line with what you're being asked to contribute or accomplish? If not, why not? Is your energy somewhere else? Next, 7, relationships. So what relationships do you have that you can leverage to contribute in the way that you need? What relationships are absent that you need to nurture or form to get where you want to go? So relationship dynamics mean a lot. I mean, why are we not CEOs? I can tell you why. It's not because of lack of cognitive ability. It's because we didn't grow up in freaking, some highfalutin place with a prep school and went to Harvard, or Stanford. That's pretty much the key attribute of executive. And as much as I hate to say it, that's the reality of life. There's data that supports that. And I want to change that. It's not equitable. It's not right. And you don't have the best talent, either at executive levels or in other jobs. So 8 is passions, purpose, intentions. So are we clear on our purpose, passions, what we want to do? So that's a whole thing, right? The last 2 are more mundane. Financial. So as an individual, how much do I want or need to make, to support my family, to get where I want to go? Reciprocally, on the talent assessment development framework, how much am I willing to pay? So making sure that there's a match there. Lastly is wellness or well-being and benefits. So when I talk about benefits, I'm not only talking about healthcare benefits, but I'm talking about, is it okay for me to commute to work an hour each day? Is it okay for me to work, 60, 70 hours a week? Being very conscious of the boundaries that I have as an individual. So how do I want to educate my kids or my grandkids? I want them to be very aware of their whole self and making sure that what they're doing, how they're spending their time, aligns with their purpose, that they're stoked on what they're contributing or accomplishing, that they're hanging out with their tribe in relationships, that they're developing skills that are going to enable them to build their economic engine over time, that they're showing up in ways that are virtuous, that represent themselves really well. So that's what I hope, is that we take a new approach to individual development and we take new approaches to assessing and developing people externally. I'll give you one very concise example. Growth mindset has been around for 12, 14 years, if not longer, when Carol Dweck came out with the book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, which again is behind me. And so Microsoft talks about we talk about feedback and OQIs. They don't talk about feedback. They talk about perspectives. And so they've changed their language. I cite a Chinese proverb: the beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. So it's like, I want us as human beings to be very conscious of language. So growth mindset, they transformed the culture at Microsoft around growth mindset, and they're doing really well post Ballmer era, and Satya Nadella has done a fantastic job. I mean, it's a great story. I asked the question, not only at Microsoft, but others, or not at Microsoft, but others, like, hey, growth mindset, is that part of your training? Is that part of the language? Yes. Are you assessing for that as they come in, as you're seeking or selecting talent? No. Like, what the hell is going on? If it's that important to you, if you believe in it that much and you're not assessing for it, if you're not nurturing it, what are you doing? So I believe in the future, there's going to be more assessments around growth mindset. Like my daughter, she doesn't have a degree right now. I'd hire her in a second. She would kick tail at 9 out of 10 jobs. Now, will she kick tail as a doctor? No, because she doesn't have the technical skill. She doesn't have that background. She hasn't, put those feathers in her cap. But, those other key attributes, she'll do great at. So that's what I would hope, is that we take a more systematic, looking at the whole person approach than we have historically, and just looking at, okay, they worked at Google, so let's hire them.
Right.
Interesting. It does lead me to one more question, because it seems obvious to me. Does the fact that the programs in high school, the auto shops and the skills that have been taught as a almost abundance, those things are not being taught anymore. Those things are losing funding. Those things, is that affecting what you're talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, we're human beings, and not everyone's going to go to college. Not everyone should go to college. We need to be more open to diverse, not only career pathways, because career's even like a misnomer, because it implies that someone's going to be a certain thing for the duration of their adulthood. And that's not the case. There's going to be a constant reinvention. I mean, it used to be like 7 jobs, and now it's like 17 jobs over the course of your career. I mean, the numbers, and forgive me, I don't have like a specific reference on that, but it's that order of magnitude. So, I would, if you're working on cars, that's a trick question, because that's part of the industry that's being disrupted. So it should be it might be an electric car. But the idea that we need to work with our hands, construction is not going to go away. There's a gross shortage of pole climbers, pole workers in utilities. It's a dangerous job. It's a physical job. It pays well. If I had another life, I would go do it. It sounds fun to me.
The kids.
And now a word from the content creator. We wanted to thank you for supporting us by watching our videos. We would like to ask for one more bit of support. We cannot continue without subscribers. We are searching for sponsors, but we need to prove their business will be seen. If you get any value in our videos, please consider subscribing. For those of you super fans who have already subscribed, please hit the like and leave a comment. We need those thumbs up to get the video to new folks. We need the comments to point us in the direction that will interest you. You've been with us from the start. We are in your debt. And if we don't get any sponsors, we are going to be in debt. Peace and love, Chuck and Tommy G. www.outloudpod.com.
The kids that traditionally were in the shop classes, they had to come to school to go to shop class. Right. I don't care what your reason was. I went to St. Paul so I could play football.
Likewise.
Straight up. And everything else that happened at St. Paul was a benefit. Learning religion, the kindness of teachers, whatever, hierarchical structures. But those guys we're coming to school to get to shop fourth period.
Yeah.
You know, and I just, it drives me bananas. I mean, you're not really prepared for a job sometimes when you come out of high school, you know, unless you're the top 10% or the bottom 10%. The kids in the middle can't get a job.
Well, that's where,
straight away.
And again, I don't want to imply other countries are perfect either, but I think I wrote an article about this a few years ago, and I believe the greatness in America was rooted in our ability to learn and adapt fast and at scale. Our response to World War II being
fast,
the best example, because we were a medium-sized country. We weren't a world power like many just assume that we were forever. You know, it was really, hey, we got bombed Japan, you know, we got surprised, and we're fortunate enough to have natural resources, and we accessed those resources quickly at scale, and we adapted to the realities, we innovated, and that innovation continued, you know, throughout. And then, you know, in the 70s, we got our tails kicked largely by Japan, and then we reinvented ourselves, and then the internet age came, and we've been a leader. Right now, we're not setting ourselves up to be leaders based on the way our educational system is structured.
Right.
And that concerns me. And I think it should concern everybody, because other countries are identifying appropriate educational experiences earlier in life for young people. So if I'm not now 18 years old sitting in class just waiting for the clock to turn over because I don't have any purpose here. You know, in other countries, they've already had 4, 5, 6 years learning a trade, or, you know, learning a specific skill that is directly employable.
Even the language, teaching language in elementary school versus high school. I mean, it's bananas.
Right.
You know, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. So it's something that, yeah, I can only address the problems that, you know, I have. But one of the things that I am advocating, and I just had this discussion with a large pharmaceutical company, head of HR, day before yesterday, is that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, large employers actually used to go and partner with educational institutions and co-create programs so graduates would, in effect, just walk into jobs, not probably all of them, but the higher levels, like, hey, we've sponsored this program. And that faded away in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And I hope that gets reinvigorated in some way, where if I am a young person, that I know that I am doing something that is going to land in a positive economic reality for me. Because right now, so many people are going through school and like, well, I hope I get a job. You know, I hope this degree is going to be of value by somebody. I think it's absolutely preposterous. And that's one reason I told my daughter, I was like, hey, you ain't feeling it? Mm-mm. In fact, if I were a smart employer, if I had the resources and someone biochem, I would find her. I'd say, you're a biochem, you know, I'll write you a check right now. You take the year off and you come work for me in 4 years. And, you know, there's some of that happening in engineering. Like if you want to like be an engineer at Texas A&M, that's what's, you know, happening there, is that they're paying kids, you know, 20-year-olds, juniors and seniors before they graduate, because the talent market is so competitive in that segment.
Lock them in.
But it needs to be more pervasive across disciplines and across industries, across companies. It needs to be a matter of policy, in my view. But it's just, we're not there yet.
Well, you would be upset with your daughter if she took $200,000 and went to Del Mar and bet on the favorite.
Right.
You know, because that's essentially what she's doing, right? If you go to college, you're putting $200,000 down, betting on the favorite path, but that doesn't mean it's going to win. You know,
that's right.
It's quite.
And even if she gets the great job, you know, is it going to fulfill her purpose? Is it her passion? And if she needs to take time to kind of hone that, then heck yeah.
Do it.
You know, I don't want her to go $200,000 deep, 4 years down the road, and like, what the hell did I do? I did this to make my dad happy. I did this because society told me I should do it. So I want her to do that work. I want her to take that time. And, she ain't gonna be playing video games and, scrolling IG all day. That's not, who she is. I wouldn't let her do that.
Right.
So, that's where dad would step in. But
hey, wait a minute.
It is an absolutely fascinating conversation, Al. I can't even tell you. We could go in about 2 or 3 at least different directions and expound on all of it. I think we definitely want to hear a little bit about your joys and your challenges and your lessons, the kids, what your kind of bucket list going forward is, some fun stuff that is kind of outside of the box of the rest of all the things that we've talked about, and what's happening, what's going forward. What do you got going personally?
Well, I'm a beach volleyball player. I love it. Chuck, you and I talked about that. It's just, it's old, young, it's men and women, people from all over the world. I played in London. I played in, Manly Beach outside of Sydney and Melbourne. And it's just, it's where I find my joy, running around and jumping and diving. And it's just fun. Yeah. And I do that with my kids. My son, Cash, just jumped on a plane today to Atlantic City. He's playing the AVP next year, so a professional tournament.
Wow.
He just won his AAA, which is the highest level rating here in California, this past weekend with his partner, Chicory Ross. So super stoked for them, and he has a smile on his face enjoying it. So nice. That's fun. And Ave, that news is fresh that she's not going to college. Right. But she said it with a smile.
Handled it with the greatest of ease, by the way. I'm very impressed.
She was smiling when she told me, and I smiled right back at her because, you look at a kid, who's wide-eyed, wondering what the world is all about. And I saw a woman taking charge. Nice. So, I started this off by talking about my dad, and, I told him I wasn't going, be an officer in the Marine Corps. She just had that conversation with me like 3 years before I had that conversation with my dad.
Ahead of schedule.
and ahead of schedule. And she did it with a smile and, immense confidence. I did it sheepishly in a public place, so I didn't get my ass kicked. So I get to hang out with her more. She's going to stay in town. I'm stoked. We're talking about coaching volleyball together. And
nice.
So I'm really hopeful and excited about the future. It doesn't say it's not without struggle. It's, as much as I might come across, I got things figured out. I just want to emphasize that, I'm learning, I got struggles. And so, we're coming out of COVID, I'm in the conference business, couldn't have hit any other business harder.
Right.
So I had to reinvent a lot of things and, I embrace the struggle. It's part of, who I am, I think rooted in sports in some ways. And so as I look forward, I would hope that my platform and my influence and my voice continue to inspire goodness in the world. And if I can look back and, see some actual results towards that end, then, I'll continue to feel good. And I have, so I just need to keep chopping wood. You know how that is, both of you.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad you're out there, and we're glad that you have the taking up the side that we think is the good and the greater good. And I think that's fantastic. Restores my faith in humanity, one conversation at a time. So
agreed. I
appreciate you sharing all that. It's we got some fun stuff to wrap up with, but let me just say thank you so much for being here with us and chopping it up and being so forthcoming, and really glad to get a chance to hear all the information. And there's probably more that that we can come back on and do another one some down the road here a little bit too. But
just let me know. I mean, Tommy, Chuck, I mean, it's an honor. I'm humbled that we're talking about me. I feel like a little kind of egotistical. I feel like it's not normal that I talk about myself. So thank you for providing.
This is a masterclass, man.
Thank you for providing a safe place to do it. And I love what you're doing, and I'm gonna start watching or listening to some other episodes too. And I'm like,
we need some tips, man. We need to get a little conference call going. Some tips.
I don't know. Yeah, y'all are doing.
I'm gonna start listening to yours. I'm gonna start listening.
You're doing pretty damn well.